What do you do? It's one of the simplest questions in the world until you retire. I'm guessing right now you're either ignoring the question entirely or you're reaching for that one phrase almost every new retiree reaches for. Well, I used to be. Most people brace for the loss of their job, or honestly, the joy of losing it if that job was something you couldn't stand. Almost nobody braces for the loss of their self-concept, the invisible ID card your brain has been carrying around for 30 or 40 years that says, in permanent ink, this is who you are. For decades, that card got stamped every single day, a meeting you ran, a problem only you could solve, a thank you doctor or nice work, or a nod from a coworker who needed you. Every one of those was a tiny deposit into an account labeled, "This is who I am." Then one Tuesday, the deposits stop, and the account doesn't just sit there quietly. It starts to feel like it's shrinking, even though nothing about you actually changed. That's not weakness. That's not a personality flaw. That's just what happens when the primary source of a 40-year-old identity account gets shut off without warning. If this is your first time here, this channel is for people standing at the edge of retirement or already living inside it, trying to make sense of the parts nobody warns you about. Not the 401k parts, the 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling, who am I now parts. So let's actually talk about that. You know you've retired. You know your birthday keeps happening, whether you like it or not. But a lot of people don't know why. A few months in, they start to feel restless, invisible, less confident, unmotivated, a little disconnected, even from people they love. Nobody prepared you for that list because nobody put it on the list of things you'd lose. The list you got was structure, paycheck, people, routine, the visible stuff. Nobody mentioned the invisible one sitting underneath all of it. So let's name it, because naming a feeling is the first step to not being ruled by it. If that sentence just landed a little too accurately, you're not alone. That's exactly what this video is about. 5 specific ways it happens, why your brain does this to you, and how you rebuild each one deliberately on your own terms. 1. Identity. Remember the question I asked you earlier? What do you do? Watch what happens when someone actually asks a new retiree that. There's a pause, a flicker, sometimes a small, almost apologetic laugh, followed by, "Well, I used to be." That pause is the moment you're watching identity leave the room in real time. Take Margaret, a retired teacher. For 31 years, she was Mrs. Reyes to a few thousand kids and their parents. She had a title, a room, a purpose that started ringing at 7:45 every morning. 6 weeks into retirement, someone at the grocery store asked what she did, and she says she genuinely blanked. "I stood there holding a cantaloupe like I'd forgotten my own name." Here's the psychology. Your brain doesn't separate what you do from who you are nearly as cleanly as you'd think. For decades, those two things were fused so tightly they felt identical. So when the job ends, part of your brain isn't celebrating the freedom. It's quietly searching for the missing piece, the way your tongue keeps finding the gap where a tooth used to be. But the truth is, that gap isn't permanent, and it isn't empty. It's just unlabeled for now. The person under the job title didn't disappear. She's just waiting for you to introduce yourself to her properly for the first time in decades. 2. Routine. Second thing to go quiet, the structure that used to run your life without you having to think about it. Ray, a retired long-haul truck driver. For 26 years, his days were built by mile markers, delivery windows, and a dispatcher's voice in his ear. Structure wasn't something Ray had. It was something that happened to him, automatically, every single day. Then he retired, and for the first time since he was 19 years old, Nobody told him where to be. He said the first month felt like a vacation. The second month felt like drifting in open water with no shoreline in sight. A full calendar isn't just about time management. It's a form of quiet reassurance, proof, hour by hour, that you have somewhere to be and someone who's counting on you being there. Take that away all at once, and even a genuinely free, relaxed person can start to feel unmoored, like every day is somehow the same shapeless day on repeat. Like, when was the last time you woke up and nobody on the planet was expecting you anywhere? For most working adults, the honest answer is never. Not once in decades. So of course, the first time it happens, it feels less like peace and more like free fall. But in essence, you're not losing structure. You're being handed the pen for the first time in your adult life and told you get to design the days instead of just surviving them. That's terrifying for about a month. Then, for most people, it becomes the best part of the whole deal. 3. Feeling needed. This one hits quieter but deeper. The simple daily sensation of being needed. Psychologically, this one runs deep. Being needed isn't just nice. It's one of the core signals your brain uses to measure whether you matter. Take it away suddenly, completely, and your nervous system doesn't experience that as relaxation. It experiences it as a kind of alarm. If nobody needs me, what's my function here? That question is uncomfortable. It's also, weirdly, one of the most human questions a person can ask themselves. Diane, a retired nurse. For 28 years, people needed her in the most literal, immediate sense a job can offer. An alarm going off, a patient calling her name, a family in a hallway needing someone calm to tell them what's happening. That kind of needed doesn't exist in most retirements. Diane says the hardest adjustment wasn't the schedule. It was the silence where the need used to be. What people fail to realize is that being needed doesn't end when the job ends. It just changes address. A grandchild who needs a ride and a captive audience for their opinions. A neighbor who needs someone to notice they haven't left the house in a week. A community garden that needs someone who actually shows up on time. The need doesn't disappear. It just stops coming with a paycheck attached, which, let's be honest, is sometimes when it means the most. 4. Confidence. Fourth one, and this is the one people are most embarrassed to admit out loud. Retirement can quietly chip away at confidence, even in people who spent decades being extremely good at what they did. Take Walter, a former business owner who built a company from a garage into 40 employees over 30 years. Walter made decisions that moved payroll, hired and fired, negotiated contracts most people would find terrifying. 2 years into retirement, he told a friend he felt strangely nervous about calling a customer service line to dispute a bill. "I used to run a company," he said, "and now I'm rehearsing a phone call to my internet provider." That's not Walter getting weaker. That's Walter's brain losing its daily proof of competence. For decades, confidence was refreshed constantly. A closed deal, a solved problem, a great work today. Retirement doesn't erase the competence. It just cancels the subscription to daily proof of it. The confidence was never actually stored in the job. It was stored in you, and the job was simply the gym where you exercised it every day. New gyms exist. A woodworking class where your first project is genuinely bad and your fifth one isn't. A hard hike you didn't think you could finish. A grandchild science project you helped troubleshoot until 11 p.m. Confidence rebuilds anywhere effort and small wins are allowed to happen. The job was never the only building on the block. 5. Future direction. And the fifth, quietest of all, a clear sense of what's next. This one is deeply human and deeply common, even for people whose situation looks nothing like Elaine's. For decades, next was handed to you. The next review, the next raise, the next stage of a career ladder someone else built. Retirement removes the ladder entirely. And a brain that spent 40 years climbing something doesn't automatically know how to simply stand somewhere and be content. Elaine, a widow who retired the same year she lost her husband. For most of her working life, what's next had an obvious answer. The next shift, the next promotion, the next milestone with someone at home to share it with. When both the career and the partnership ended in the same season, she said the strangest part wasn't grief exactly. It was a total absence of a horizon. I didn't know what I was supposed to be walking toward anymore. But direction doesn't require a ladder. It requires a compass, and compasses are built, not inherited. A goal with no boss attached. A hiking trail. A language, a book finally finished. A relationship finally repaired. The horizon doesn't come pre-installed anymore. But that also means, for the first time in your adult life, you get to choose the view. Notice the pattern running underneath all 5 of these. It's not really about the job or the paycheck at all. For 40 years, your brain quietly associated waking up with responsibility, conversation, and purpose, all arriving automatically, all at once, every single morning. When all 3 vanish simultaneously, your brain isn't relaxing, it's searching. That search is what people mistake for boredom or sadness or losing their edge. It's none of those things. It's a highly capable brain that spent decades being handed purpose, suddenly being asked to generate its own for the very first time, and doing exactly what any of us would do in that situation, feeling a little lost before it finds its footing. So here's how you actually rebuild each of these, deliberately, instead of waiting around for it to happen on its own. For identity, stop chasing a new noun and start collecting new verbs. You don't need a replacement title. You need a sentence that starts with, I'm learning to, or I've been building. Verbs, update, titles calcify. Nobody gets stuck introducing themselves the same way for 30 years when the sentence starts with a verb. For routine, build one deliberate anchor before you fill the whole calendar. One walk, one phone call, one ritual you control completely. Structure doesn't need to be rebuilt all at once. It needs one load-bearing wall before the rest of the house goes up. For feeling needed, find one place, weekly, where your presence is actually required. Not optional, required. A grandchild's pickup, a volunteer shift, a standing coffee with a friend who's counting on you showing up. Being needed by choice hits differently than being needed by paycheck, but it fills the exact same tank. For confidence, pick something with a visible learning curve on purpose. Something you'll be bad at first. Confidence doesn't come from being instantly good at things. It comes from watching yourself get less bad over time, which, frankly, your job stopped giving you the chance to feel a long time ago. For direction, pick one target with a finish line, a trip, a certification, a physical goal, a creative project, something with a date on it. Your brain doesn't need a boss. It needs a destination. And here's the humor break you've earned. Nobody is saying you need to start a business at 68, run a marathon, or reinvent yourself as a motivational speaker. If your version of rebuilding identity is becoming the undisputed neighborhood expert on tomato blight, that counts. Purpose doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to be yours. Now, to be fair, this isn't universal. If your career genuinely was your calling, the thing you'd have done even without the paycheck, walking away from it can be a real, legitimate loss, not just an identity adjustment to work through. Some retirees go back part-time, on entirely their own terms, keeping the parts that fed them and dropping the parts that didn't. That's not failure. That's just self-knowledge. For most people, though, what felt like identity turns out to have been a job description wearing very convincing clothes. And underneath it, once the clothes come off, is somebody most people actually end up liking quite a bit. For years, your profession answered the question, who are you? Retirement doesn't erase that person. It simply hands the question back to you and asks you to answer it in your own words for the first time in decades. The retirees who thrive, the ones who genuinely, unmistakably light up when they talk about this chapter, aren't the ones clinging to the title they used to carry. They're the ones who went looking for a purpose no job title could ever have handed them in the first place. The disappearing happens fast. The rebuilding happens slow. And that strange, uncomfortable quiet sitting in between the two of them isn't emptiness. It's construction. So here's what I want you to sit with. When was the last time someone genuinely needed you on a random Monday morning? Not because a job required it, but because you chose to show up. If you can't answer that yet, that's all right. That's exactly the compass this video is pointing you toward. Tell me in the comments, when you retired or when you picture it, which of these 5 hit closest to home? Identity, routine, feeling needed, confidence, or direction? I read every one, and honestly, some of the best insight on this channel comes straight from you. And if you know someone standing right at this edge, staring at the list of everything they think they're about to lose, send them this. They might need to hear that the first thing that goes quiet isn't the end of them. It's the beginning of the rest of them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.